Hello friends, in this session we are going to discuss some issues related to political science and some institutions which are established, organized to govern society, nations and world at large. Govern in the sense to regularize and to make convenient our life in society as well as in the world. You have already studied institutions such as Gram Panchayat, Panchayat Samiti and Jilla Parishad. They are organized as local self-government institutions. And in our discussions related to history, we have understood the concept of sovereignty. While discussing the concept of sovereignty, we understand that the term sovereignty or a sovereign nation denotes the nation referred to by the term is governed by its own constitutional laws and no outside force controls its policies. However, we have also understood that this literal and ideal state of being is to be taken in a very limited sense, because in actuality, in today's international political scenario, in a world which is becoming more and more a global village, it is just impossible for any country to be totally immune to outside influence. Of course, no country, that is to say a sovereign country, directly controls the policies of another sovereign nation. But there are ways and means, and actually we are interdependent as well as interrelated as individuals as well as nations, because nations are formed by individuals. It is a community of individuals, and we are dependent as well as interrelated. As individuals, we are interrelated with our neighbors, our near ones and far away neighbors, and our neighbors are also interrelated with us for various needs. Similarly, as a nation, we are interrelated and interdependent, and the event in one part of the globe affects another parts of the globe, another parts of the world. For example, the price rise in the crude oil and in the Middle East, that is Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, results in the price hike all over the world. Thus, all nations are interrelated economically, and not only economically, all nations are interrelated in almost all walks of life. The recent and as yet ongoing COVID-19 is a potent phenomenon. It is an obvious example. If this interrelation is governed by understanding and cooperation, all nations benefit from it. And if there is mutual rivalry and a feeling of hatred, enmity, then all nations suffer from it. That is what exactly happened in the previous century. Two world wars, First World War and Second World War. They were the results of feelings of rivalry and feelings of enmity. We are going to discuss in short the two world wars, two great wars, destructive wars in the previous century and aftermath of these events, because they were the most important events in the last century, and many institutions, many changes in the formation of the world came as a result of these world wars. Now, World War I took place in the last century during the years 1914 to 1918. End of the First World War, the date, the exact date, I remember it because it happened in the month of November. 11th of November 1918 is the date on which First World War came to an end. But the seeds of the Second World War were laid in the end of the First World War. The First World War was fought. Of course, I am not going to discuss the causes and background of the First World War, because that is the topic of history and not political science. Main reason of the First World War, cause of the First World War, was the rivalry among the European nations. European nations like England, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain. These nations had established many colonies all over the world, particularly in Africa and Asia. And Germany and Italy, they entered this race of establishing colonies very late. England had started to establish colonies way back from from the 15th and 16th century, whereas Germany began to establish its colonies in the 19th century, from 1880 onwards. Under the leadership of Bismarck, Germany entered this race. So Germany was very far behind other European countries, particularly far behind England. And of course, you know, England had crown in the jewel in the form of Indian subcontinent. In Indian subcontinent, Britain had established their colonies. So, because of this jealousy and rivalry, First World War was fought among the European countries. But it affected all other nations, and America, which was not actually involved in this race of colonizing other nations. America had to take part, at least to end the First World War. And after the end of the First World War, Treaty of Versailles was signed. In this treaty itself, it was a provision to establish League of Nations. When the war was going on, it was said that this is the war to end all wars. So the leaders of nations which were actually involved in this First World War, they were aware that this is a very destructive type of war, and this type of war should not happen again. Should not happen again because it affects all the nations, and all the nations, whether they are winners or whether they are losers, they suffer from it. Therefore, to avoid any war in the future, winning countries, particularly Britain, France, America, Italy, they decided to establish League of Nations, an organization to settle disputes peacefully, settle disputes among the nations in a peaceful way. But unfortunately, League of Nations did not succeed, and Second World War also took place from 1939 to 1945. Now, why the Second World War took place, even if there was League of Nations to avoid war? Because the winners in the First World War did not take active effort to settle the disputes peacefully. One thing. And some of the nations did not cooperate fully. Particularly America did not participate in League of Nations. They were one of the member countries, one of the members who led the way to establish League of Nations, but afterwards United States did not participate and take active part in League of Nations. And Italy, though Italy was on the winning side, the common feeling among Italians was that Treaty of Versailles did not give them much benefit. They were grumbling about the treaty. And Germany, particularly Germany, under Hitler, Treaty of Versailles was very unjust treaty. Germany was not happy with this treaty, and therefore during this period, after the end of First World War and beginning of the Second World War, autocratic regimes, that is dictatorships, were on the rise in Germany, and Mussolini governed thereafter in Italy, and Adolf Hitler in Germany. And thereafter Second World War occurred, and after the end of the World War II, United Nations was established. Friends, some of the details of Second World War, causes of the Second World War, failure of the League of Nations, and establishment of the United Nations, UN. These points we shall discuss in the second part of the video. Thanks.